I made a mistake yesterday. I said that yesterday was Sunday. It was Monday, and I was going to correct that. It was in my notes as I had the video playing, but I just forgot to mention that. And then another point that I was trying to make when I was talking about equal opportunity. So equal opportunity does not mean equal outcome. I've said that before, so I just wanted to clarify that because I didn't do it yesterday. Anyway. Oh my goodness, yesterday was St. Patrick's Day. It was Regimental Day. So many crazy things, even with friends and family that were going on. And I did have a regimental drink with my partner. We are both former Patricias, but once a Patricia, always a Patricia. And I also have, Irish background, obviously, but I mean, I have Irish, Scottish, UK, French, obviously French as well, and some Indigenous in there as well from Canada's Indigenous population from when there was immigration from Europe. And yeah, my partner, he has some Ukrainian or a lot of Ukrainian blood as well in his family. And we were just talking yesterday just about like all the stuff that we've done in our career separately, and but then looking at how far our countries, like where our families come from, like they have fallen. And it's supposed to be at a time of like like a scientific revolution, industrial revolution, tech revolution, all of these advancements and things like that. And it seems like we are de-evolving. And so we were talking about France, and because again, that's from my father's side, and and his mother's side. And we're just like, look who's in. Like, there's a guy that's literally a groomer pedophile that's pretending to be a woman, lying about it, which is like the bigger thing as well. Well, not the bigger thing. The bigger thing is being a pedophile groomer and being part of a global elite that uses these things for power and blackmail and bribery and things like that. But starting to groom and molest Emmanuel Macron when he was 14 years old. Like, this is like, I feel bad for Emmanuel Macron for being involved in this. Like, I do believe that he is someone that is unfortunately someone that was groomed for this and indoctrinated, whatever you want to call it. Just like oh my God, what's her name? That environmentalist. She was an autistic child and just got fully exploited. And I do blame her parents for that as well, obviously. Greta Thunberg or something like that. Anyway, something like that. There's just so many examples of this, like even Justin Bieber and Lil Wayne, Beyonce, Margaret Trudeau, when that's Justin Trudeau's mother. She was a child. I think she was 13 years old when Pierre Elliott Trudeau met her on a beach in BC. And yeah, and then people don't know that story. Very interesting. Pierre Elliott Trudeau also is someone who resigned. So, and he was also a really terrible prime minister for so many different reasons, but also lying about the moon landings during his tenure. Like, that was a big lie. That's like the biggest lie that we've been given by these people. Yeah, so we were talking about France, long story short, and how it's been essentially like occupied and taken over by globalist elitists that don't care about the people at all. Like, people within France are struggling. Like, you've heard so much about the yellow jackets and so many other things that people have issues with, and it's because of their leadership. And then even look what happened in Paris with the Olympic Games or whatever it was, with that ridiculous ceremony that they had at the beginning with the guy's ball, his testicle out by a child on stage. Don't tell me that was not intentional. Come on. And any of the people that were like that were filming too could have like said like, hey, get this guy off stage. He's got a costume malfunction or whatever, or warn him to like tuck it back in. But no, none of that happened. It was just allowed to play on. Absolutely disgusting. And UK, same thing. There's been such a shift of friggin' prime ministers or leaders. And Boris Johnson, again, he is another criminal. And he was rules for thee, not for me, through the whole entirety of COVID, and lied about that, the whole thing. Again, also occupied from within. If you look at the people that are like the heads of the education boards and other boards at the highest levels of government, supposed to be the experts, these people are not in alignment with actual UK traditional cultures and values and norms, with a more Christian-backed rulership type, right? Because you should always have some form of religious connection to a system of governance for so many different reasons. But I talked about that in yesterday's video on chat from ChatGPT. We were talking about that. So if you're interested, look at that video. And yeah, so we were talking about UK, France, Ukraine. My God, they have had it so incredibly bad for a very long time. And I've talked about Holodomor as well, attack on Christians. Millions of Christians died at the hands of the government, a communist government that was being influenced by right-wing fascists, right, left and right, part of the same bird, um, and just a genocide that's going on, and a lot of Ukrainian families just completely wiped off the map, never to um, share their lineage or their line. It's very unfortunate. And look what's going on in Israel and Palestine. Oh my God. But anyway, we don't have any affiliation with them. Well, I mean, I guess Israel, like, because they're European. And that's why they can't do the 23andMe ancestry stuff, because then it would just be very obvious. So I've been talking about the possibility of there being a draft in Canada. And when that happens, that is not a good point in this cycle. If that makes any sense. And I was calling it, I said men and women. And so we have here from Mike McFarthing, Vice President, Global Business Development and Investor Relations at Terra Nova. There was more I wanted to talk about. And we're actually first connections. And this is my round 3 on LinkedIn, just to be clear. So he's Vice President, Global Business Development and Investor Relations at Terra Nova Aerospace and Defense Group Corporation, board member of the Cyber Security Global Alliance, not profit. So they're getting money from kickbacks and money laundering. Anyway, advisor Frontier Metrology. So very interesting that he's in the aerospace, cybersecurity stuff. And he's talking about a draft. Shocking. And so compulsory military service for both men and women in Canada could be the answer to numerous issues. If it was based on the Swiss Canton region, your deployment, service, and defense would be where you live. Train, fitness, responsibility, and strengthen our nation. May citizenship for newcomers of age... What? I don't know what he meant. Make citizenship for newcomers of age a requirement. Oh my God. Now he's talking about people coming in when we have such like an open border policy, and we're accepting people that are here under false pretenses, claiming asylum or refugee status when they are not in any place where there's danger. There's no wars going on in India and China. Like if you haven't heard, well, there's a lot of human trafficking and enslavement of the Uyghurs and stuff like that. But you know, yeah, and 100% tariffs on some Canadian goods now. No one's talking about that. But you want to take people from countries where they hate us. Not everyone, obviously, but like it's just not compatible with our Western traditions, cultures, values, ideologies, etc. They could take the radicals from within these groups, extremists. Like we already have thousands of people here that should be deported immediately. Like not good people that have raped, murdered, tortured, genocides, and involvement, all of this stuff in multiple different countries, and they are here. Some of them even like where taxpayer money is absolutely funding their lifestyles. And yeah, so open border policies. We have really, really, really loose immigration laws in place and regulations. Temporary foreign workers coming here in the hundreds of thousands a year, taking jobs from Canadians, taking housing from Canadian, taking taxpayers' money from Canadians. And not like immersing themselves within the society, right? They're like there's people there's areas now that are completely occupied within Canada from various different sectors, and there's a lot of crime, there's a lot of damage, there's a lot of anyway. And this is not to target or single out any specific race, religions, whatever you want to call it. Absolutely not. These are individuals that are exploiting Canadians, and we are allowing it because of global elitists like Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau and these clowns that have been lying to us for years, and they don't care about societal impacts or implications for the policies and measures and mandates that they enforce, knowing that it causes more harm than good in most cases, and completely captured by WEF and Bilderberg. Anyway, I'm not even finished reading yet. Yeah. So citizenship for newcomers, that people that haven't like that maybe don't even speak English or French yet, which is these are our national recognized languages. And it was really interesting that Trump is actually the first one that actually made English the national language for the U.S. I wondered that for years why that wasn't something, because it's necessary. There should be a common language utilized within societies, and a common religion, and or a blend, but blends that where they complement each other, not divide, like opposed to each other. Yeah. So are we patriotic when it's others who stand on guard, or when we or our kids do too? Wow. So my comment was only the people profiting from a proxy war would demand a draft for men and women of Canada. Our military is broken, but why? Our leadership has stifled growth and pushed a woke DEI narrative for years, kicked people out for not getting an experimental jab, and have exhausted our military funds to commit a genocide in Ukraine and Palestine under false pretenses. Again, Carney and Poilievre profit from the military industrial complex, and most of the tax money is being laundered, while many of the weapons we send get sold on the black market to our enemies. We need to reconstitute our forces and assets, rebuild, push a truthful message, and promote having a strong military again. Yes, we are vulnerable right now, but look at the reasons why. And so I'm going to get a lot of hate for that on this freaking platform, because I always do. Excuse me. And when I was giving facts about what's actually going on in Ukraine a few years ago, like that's when my accounts kept on getting zapped on here, because LinkedIn is a pedophile network. Owned platform is what I meant to say. So the network itself is not like that, but they're like the people that created LinkedIn are on the Epstein list, and even Elon Musk admitted that multiple times on social media platforms, including Joe Rogan. So I mean that's a pretty big one. And so fact check him. What just happened here? Back in. No. My screen popped out. Okay, here we go. Before I get into Mark Carney, oh my goodness. Okay, so I fact checked this. So Sasha Carney is Mark Carney's daughter, who now I don't know if she currently is, but is trans or was trans. And she, so Mark Carney sent his eldest daughter, Sasha Carney, to discredited UK Tavistock transgender clinic. And this is also where Brigitte Macron went as well for transgender surgeries, and other people did as well. I think even Michael Obama. I shouldn't say that. But anyway, it's just the lying that's the biggest part as well, right? Like your podcast sucks. I know this. So yeah, so she was she went to England with her father when she was 13, and it was within that period that she went to Tavistock for transgender surgeries and treatments and operations, whatever you want to call it. I don't know exactly what she's had done, but she was a minor, and this is the current Prime Minister of Canada, literally transitioned his own daughter, allowed this to happen when she was a minor. These people should be in jail, not leading our country. This is not informed consent. This is irreversible damage. And she might, again, I don't know the whole situation, but I know that she went there and she trans. Look at her now. She identifies as a woman that looks like a typical tomboy lesbian. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't even look like anyway. And you will never transition to be a man. I'm sorry. It's just not a reality. And I mean that respectfully. Do I care what you do as an adult if it's not impacting society and harming children? No, I don't. It's at that point, it's like no one's business, right? Like what you do in your own time. Like Blair White, she's identifies as a trans woman, very feminine, and this absolutely is a case where at a very young age she did have that gender dysphoria, whatever you want to call it, and wanted to present more as a woman, and didn't do any of the operations or surgeries or the hormone blockers when she was a child. Did all these other surgeries and operations and stuff like that as an adult with her own money. And so, yeah, and I would not feel uncomfortable at all to be in a bathroom or a shower stall or whatever with someone like that. There are rare cases of people that are trans with this gender dysphoria that really do believe that they were born in the wrong body, but it's extremely rare. It's been monopolized for money. It's been hijacked. And there's people that either are, they have like possible neurological conditions such as like being autistic, or people that have trauma within their childhood, or people that are uncomfortable with puberty and just trying to figure life out, that are exploited by demons. I don't actually believe in demons in the real sense. I believe that individuals who do works that are bad are the demons of the world. And so many clinics for gender assignment, reassignment surgery and all this stuff like popped up all over the US and Canada since 2017. I've shared those stats. Absolutely appalling. This is a money game, and parents, I think, also were, impacted for life over allowing what they thought were professionals and experts to hijack their child's childhood. Anyway, and so Mark Carney, just for this alone, just because of my opinions on what this does to the reproductive organs, is irreversible damage. This could be to the vocal cords as well, where she would like, if she had a singing voice or a more feminine voice, present more masculine and scratchy, and things that are irreversible hair loss, all of this stuff, like not even being able to have a child, possibly because of this. I'm really hoping that's not the case. Like for anyone, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but yeah, so he should be in jail, not the prime minister, in my humble opinion. So, and he's been pushing the woke DEI, climate, ESG, CBDC bullshit for years. He's been the tip of the friggin' spear when it comes to this stuff. This little troll-looking, gross individual. He looks like such a weasel, And obviously, that's not a reason not to vote for someone. So, I've said this before. He was at the Bank of Canada as well, a couple of years before I did executive protection services for the head of the Bank of Canada, which would have been him if he would have been there at the time. It wasn't him. I won't say the name of the guy, but I will say that the guy that I worked with, he seemed like a really nice guy. He seemed, smart, and he seemed like a family man and stuff like that. And so did the woman that was the SDG. Like, she seemed like a very pleasant human, right? And I don't think either of them actually know the reality of the world. Like 9/11, I don't think that they're really tracking that at that level, or even the moon landings and shit like that. Anyway, so the people that I had been working with on this on the detail had worked with Mark Carney as well, because when he was the Bank of Canada, that was their job, and they had nothing good to say about this guy. They said he was so arrogant and condescending and frustrating, and just thought he was just above everyone else. This entitled little gnome. This is what I mean. Sometimes like the elitists, they really it's in their head. They think just because they have the influence and the wealth, the inherited wealth and all that stuff, and get those secret groups, the Bilderberg groups, that they're better than people. But I know so many people that I have worked with that, are incredibly smart and talented and brilliant and fit and strong and competent and can do some hunting. They have hunting skills and fishing skills, farming skills, even though they have multiple degrees and served our country in varying capacities. Like, they have like more than just this. Anyway.
Mr. Carney, Stephanie Levitz, Globe and Mail. We understand that you have now placed your assets in a blind trust, so you don't know what's happening to them going forward, but you knew what they were going into that blind trust. So what are they?
Look, Stephanie, I follow the rules of the Ethics Commissioner. I'm following them well in advance of any of the requirements, as you know, because I know you know this. You know that these requirements come into effect in months. We're talking days after I became Prime Minister. So I'm complying with the rules of the Ethics Commissioner, going through the processes and all those things that are necessary.
The rules say that those assets should be publicly disclosed within 120 days, which means you'll campaign in a coming federal election, most likely within the next 120 days, and are serving as Prime Minister now, with Canadians not being aware of what potential conflicts of interest you sought to avoid.
What possible conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance.
He's such a liar. And then he's pointing out. He's so condescending, this guy. And this is who we're going to have talking to us, declaring like fake-ass emergencies. And it'll be like financial related, climate related.
Mr. Carney, Stephanie Levitz, Globe and Mail.
Anyway. I just wanted to share that. Before I get into more videos, stop the screen. Stop the screen. There's so much content on this guy. Everyone's saying that Canada's fudged. Fudged. All right, this is Moose on the Loose.
Today I'm announcing we'll repeal the entire carbon tax. There will be no taxes on consumers, no taxes on Canadian industries.
Is Mark Carney making a dirty deal in Europe? Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, Mark Carney's over in France. As you're going to hear from his language, it seems like he's setting us up to be joining the EU, which would be absolutely disastrous for Canada. We also got Pierre Poilievre coming out and saying he will cut the industrial carbon tax. He will cut all carbon taxes from Canada to bring back prosperity to our once amazing nation. Let's jump into this. So first up, we got Mark Carney here arriving in France.
Child abuser.
That is a very different look than what we've been seeing with Justin Trudeau. So someone's posted a reply here in the comments, and we've got the World Economic Forum, Mark Carney, Ursula von der Leyen, Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron. This lady here is the president of the European Commission. They're all WF puppets. And we've got Carney arriving here to meet Macron, as Ryan Gerritsen says. No doubt Trudeau's watching this at home and crying. You bet he is.
Paris now for the arrival at just midday of Mark Carney, Canada's new Prime Minister.
Not my prime.
There he is, meeting Emmanuel Macron, former bank chief, both here in the UK and also in Canada. The replacement, Justin Trudeau, who stepped down as the Liberal Party leader. Mark Carney winning that Liberal Party election with 86% of the vote, in the process becoming the Prime Minister of Canada.
It wasn't an election, it was a leadership race. The Canadian people did not vote for Mark Carney. Why are so many Liberal men short? Now here's the real juicy stuff. Listen to him speak here next to Macron, talking about Canada's relationship with the EU.
We both stand for sovereignty and security, demonstrated by our unwavering support for Ukraine under your leadership.
Of course.
With you, Mr. President, I want to ensure
under his leadership, like again with this proxy war, with this genocide that's going on in Ukraine right now, of oh my God, and he's again fully on board with this. He's a warmonger because he profits from it.
that France and the whole of Europe works enthusiastically with Canada, the most European of non-European countries, determined like you to maintain the most positive possible relations
I think Israel's got that.
with the United States. Canada is a reliable, trustworthy, and strong partner of France, which shares our values and lives them through action during this age of economic and geopolitical crises.
The most European of non-European.
My family on my father's side comes from France, and did a lot of work in France to build up the like cathedrals and like the scepter for royalty and all of this stuff, really prominent. And it is not the same country anymore. It is not the same.
European countries. Right away, Kevin here has posted this Canada exports and imports by country. You can see here, United States, 77% of exports to. Imports from the United States, 50.75. Where's the EU? European area, 10% and 4%. Our relationship with America has to be mended. We are intertwined with America. We're not going to wean ourselves off America overnight. This is Mark Carney trying to drag on this war, his words, with America, rather than fix it as he claims he would do one day. Yeah, Mark Carney avoiding Donald Trump. He's frightened of him. Terrifying an unelected globalist, self-identifying European is setting up Canada to become part of the EU. That's what it looks like here. Now, this is especially terrifying. First, let's just take a look at a few things here. We got Ezra Levant posting this. Total Canada-France trade in 2023, $9.5 billion. Total Canada-US trade, $900 and $23 billion, 100 times as much. But look at that. Carney is still talking about net zero. You can't develop oil and gas and be net zero. He's talking about shutting off our own oil sands.
Well,
so we take a look at Mark Carney's post here. This is on his X account. It was my pleasure seeing Emmanuel Macron today with his leadership. France is attracting unprecedented levels of foreign investment while accelerating the transition to net zero. Mark Carney didn't even try to hide this net zero stuff. He's coming out and doubling down on his first global appearance. Looking forward to more work together to create good jobs and build clean prosperity. This guy's going to be much worse than Justin Trudeau with his net zero agenda. 6 billion human beings live in energy poverty. They require oil and gas. With or without you and like-minded green ideologues, they will get oil and gas. So that's what's happened here. So Mark Carney, if you look at all the foreign affairs stuff that I keep bringing up on my Far Off Ripoff segment, Trudeau with Mark Carney as his economic advisor here for the past 5 years has been giving our tax dollars to African nations, but forcing them to use green eco net zero solutions, which puts these people into further their poverty. It just doesn't work because
and they're pushing again like the woke DEI stuff. So a lot of money going into countries as well. It's for silly, amoral, unethical activities and events that the people in the country they don't align with or support, and it's not going to be integrated into their societies. Oh my God! Just like these freaking 10 million pronouns that people are trying to push on us. This is not going to be universally adopted as any form of like English language system. I guarantee you. I've explained this before, but
look, our society can't run off of solar panels. I mean, we saw what happened in Texas this last week, big hailstorm, and now a whole bunch of them are wiped out. If those African nations want prosperity, they need to get on oil and gas too. But these green climate zealots flying around their gas-guzzling jets don't want African nations to have prosperity. I don't know what their agenda is. Are they just doubling down on the green hysteria?
They want to be perpetually in debt, which is why they're exploiting their resources, their minerals, and having them in mines, giving them precious materials that are required for our electronics and these solar panels and like the electrical vehicles and stuff like that with the lithium batteries, etc. And it's destroying their resources and their environments that they're in, and they're doing it. It's slave labor. I've showed the videos coming out of the Congo and other areas where there's even friggin' women with their children like strapped on their friggin' backs, and they're friggin' like working in these mines, and it's absolutely harming the environment. And when you put solar panels up, by the way, you're blocking the sun from penetrating the soil to have that exchange of gases in the environment to filter the environment as well and keep the soil fertile and allow there to be like grass and stuff like that grows underneath. And it also impacts the wildlife, the insects. Insects are also absolutely required, especially worms and these other bugs that are in the ground, because it assists in keeping the soil fertile as well. I can go on so many tangents, but
they know they can tap into people's emotions and sell more solar panels and wind turbines and make piles of cash off of it. Is it the easiest way to get global control? Does Mark Carney actually care about the environment?
Wind turbines also, they are harming eagles and large rare birds. They are deep in the oceans, which are impacting whale migration. It's bothering them because of the sound and the vibrations that these emit when they're running. It's making them drown. Also, they're having to go deeper and further into the ocean, and they are mammals, and they do have to go up to the surface to breathe. I don't know if people realize this, and so there's just so much harm. And then what they're doing is they break. They don't function properly. Like obviously they don't work at all when there's no wind, and then they have to generate through generators, which use oil and electricity in order to function. And then they get buried. Like these huge windmills get buried, and how long do you think it's going to take before they break up and decompose? What, thousands of years? What? And then what? Burning as well, you know? And so like more chemicals in the atmosphere. And Simi Guibault didn't get fired; he got promoted.
Environment are all about money. I mean, look at what he's done in Brookfield Asset Management. The investments they've done, the slave labor in Peru, the Maple Darby coal export terminal in Australia, oil and gas in Brazil and Dubai. There's nothing eco, green, or net zero about what he's done, his history. Take a look at this one that Clyde posted. Somebody in France is demanding that they give back the Statue of Liberty.
There is now a member of the European Parliament from France who does not think the U.S. represents the values of the Statue of Liberty anymore. They want the Statue of Liberty back.
God.
So is President Trump going to send the Statue of Liberty back to France?
Are you serious?
Absolutely not. And my advice to that unnamed low-level French politician would be to remind them that it's only because of the United States of America that the French are not speaking German right now. So they should be very grateful to our great country.
That's checkmate right there. I'm French as well as Canadian. I can't stop laughing. What a burn. I remember growing up in France in the 70s and 80s, surrounded by people hating Americans. It's ridiculous. French were saved during WW2 and have the audacity to demand the Statue of Liberty back. Got Melissa posting this one here. It says Canada contributes another $35 million towards restoring energy infrastructure in Ukraine, because apparently rebuilding Ukraine is our problem. I also saw Mark Carney will be meeting with Zelensky, so he's going to be opening up those taps, got to keep those laundry machines running in Ukraine. BlackRock has the contract to rebuild Ukraine. I guarantee Carney has his fingers in this deal. That makes sense. Can I take a guess that Brookfield Renewable will get the contract? Liberal government continues its mad race to impoverish Canadians' election now. Ukraine holds 46,351 Bitcoin. Ukraine is the fourth largest nation holder of Bitcoin. The value is approximately 3.8 billion USD. Make it make sense. So I just wanted to verify this, and that does appear to be true. Ukraine does have 46,000 Bitcoin. United Kingdom has 61,000, and China has 194,000. We got this one here. It says Canada to be EU's 28th member. Nearly half of Canadians say yes. It's just more propaganda. I don't want to be part of the EU. Canada has nothing to do with the EU. Our trade isn't that much with the EU. We're not connected to the EU. It makes way more sense if we were to merge with America versus the EU. I never got the poll bull crap. Exactly. Who wants to join with the EU? I don't know anyone. We got the National Post coming up with this one here. It says Mark Carney calls Canada the most European of non-European countries. As you heard, what's interesting about this article, you can see Mark Carney met with King Charles. Why is he meeting with King Charles? And Justin Trudeau met with King Charles just like a month ago. Were they setting this up from the start? Yes. These dirty dogs are setting up some sort of dirty deal. We go back to Ezra Levant's post here. There's this one here. It says, European Union wants to mobilize up to $800 billion to help EU countries increase defense spending. They're starting to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. They want to drag us into this? I mean, we've got a tweet coming from Mark Carney. It says, on my call with President von der Leyen, which is the that lady I showed earlier, says, we spoke about the Rearm Europe plan and Canada's role in strengthening defense at home and abroad. In the face of global threats, Canada is meeting this moment, securing new military equipment and working with allies to keep us all safe. By the way, I hate meeting this moment. I absolutely hate that saying. That's a dumb liberal saying. Carney has to go. He should move back to Europe. His policies are going to go undermine several provinces, including Alberta, and Canada's economy will be stuck in the mud like it has been for the last 10 years, or decline. I think he's setting us up to join the European Union. And what's especially scary about this, look what's happened to the European Union. If you go to France, we've seen the footage. It doesn't look like France. It's not this beautiful romantic place. People walking around, buy a red rose. It's all enraged refugees that have completely taken over the cities. Paris is unrecognizable. The protests, the rampant spray painting and graffiti of historic monuments and buildings. Yep. There's no respect. Terror groups have absolutely infiltrated these cities. You see it in Germany. I mean, we have the story of the Afghan guy who poked the German police officer in the neck who perished while there's 3 or 4 police officers pointing pew-pews at them. None of them had the courage to pull the trigger and actually do what was right. These stories are all too common. We see it in Ireland where they bring into small villages of 200 or 300 people. They'll bring in 300 people from Afghanistan or somewhere in the Middle East, completely changing the entire demographic. And sadly, a lot of the people they're bringing in are not good people. You're seeing massive increases in crime and robberies and winery grapists. You know what I mean? A lot of those things happening because of the people they're bringing in. These people aren't vetted. So just think about this. Unvetted people, a lot of these European cities are absolutely crumbling and they're just complete crap holes now because they've been filled with terrible people. If Canada becomes a part of the EU, those people will then flood to Canada. And even the best case scenario, say you have the Europeans flood to Canada, our housing crisis is just going to get worse, so much worse. Those Europeans will be selling off their castles and struggling with common Canadians to buy a 1-bedroom apartment. Their property value is so much lower than ours that they'd all be struggling for those middle class 2 bedrooms or maybe a house in places that are cheaper like Edmonton or Calgary. It is going to make the housing crisis off the charts terrible. Not to mention the crime that's going to be just jacking up too, because all these people can then jump over to Canada. All the protesters and all the terror lords, they can all just group together. This is a slippery slope and we need an election immediately. I find it especially troubling that Mark Carney didn't even try to hide his agenda. He's just out in the open here with transition to net zero. announcing this publicly on his first trip to France. With that, we're jumping over to this clip that Brian Lilly posted. We've got Robert Fife of the Globe and Mail commenting on how Mark Carney won't disclose what his assets are, what his net worth is. He's hiding all of it.
Well, what he doesn't tell us is how much he's worth.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the question here. Are you worth 10 million, 20 million, 50 million dollars? We have no idea. Who is the person who's running the blind trust? Is it your brother? Is it, if you're having an independent person who's supposed to take care of the blind trust, that person should be independent and far removed from Mr. Carney's assets. We don't know who that is. Is he requiring to sell all the stocks, which apparently you're supposed to, but has he sold all the stocks and his investments in anything that may put him in a conflict with the government? Those are things that he needs.
He's going to have so many investments in these green tech, and then he's going to be investing all of our money in it, and it'll jack his stocks. That's why he has to show us what he's got. To say that he's worth 10 or 20 or 50 million, get real. Those numbers are way off. I think you have to add a zero, and then you're in the ballpark. Yeah. We're talking 100, 200, or 500 million. Mark Carney's a rich man. He didn't get to his position to where he is to be worth $10 million. There's people in Canada who bought 3 or 4 houses, sat on them, and then sold them and have $10 million. Mark Carney's got to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars in net worth.
Yeah. He needs to answer to Canadians. And, he doesn't want to answer those questions. And you said he was a little testy. He does not like tough questions from journalists. He's used to a more compliant financial press when he was a central banker. And they're very much respectful of them. Well, we're political reporters. We have an obligation to ask the tough questions. And that's something we're going to have to watch for during the campaign. It's when he gets angry or annoyed or arrogant at journalists for pressing him on issues that he doesn't want to answer.
Yeah, I pointed this out before. It's because he's a rich guy. He doesn't get pushed by anything. So he doesn't like when someone challenges him because everyone's always rolling out the red carpet for him. It will be his biggest tell sign when he gets testy. It's clear that's something he wants to hide or he doesn't want to talk about. He's already shown that hand multiple times. And we got Ruby Dalla here commenting, how about asking Mark Carney to do the right thing and return the $350K to donors and hardworking Canadians that she raised? They disqualified her, stole her money. It's disgraceful. That's what the Liberals do. They just steal from everyone, including their own party. Next up, we got Pierre Poilievre coming out here and announcing he will cut all carbon taxes, bring our industry back up to strength, and be competitive in the world again.
Today, I'm announcing that a common sense, Canada First Conservative government will repeal the entire carbon tax, including the federal backstop that requires provinces impose industrial taxes. There will be no taxes on consumers, no taxes on Canadian industries. Instead, provinces will continue to have the freedom to address this issue how they like, but there will be no federal obligation to impose the tax. We will also axe the tax on steel, aluminum, natural gas, food production, concrete, and other industries. Instead of taxes, we will use technology. Technology, not taxes, is the best way to fight climate change and protect our environment. While the Liberals tax businesses who use energy, Conservatives will cut taxes and boost incentives for those who bring down emissions. Carrot, not stick. We will expand eligibility for the clean technology and clean manufacturing investment tax credits. We will reward heavy industries who make products with lower emissions than the world average. For example, Canada's industry produces 2 tons of greenhouse gases for every 1 ton of aluminum. China produces 12 tons of emissions for every 1 ton of aluminum, 6 times more. So every time you bring production from China back to Canada, you actually reduce emissions.
This is a great point, and then the Liberals don't like this point because this is a simple way to reduce greenhouse gases without taxing our own citizens into oblivion. And notice how there's actual workers standing behind Pierre Poilievre, unlike Mark Carney, who had to dress up some Liberals around him, which is pathetic.
On a global scale. And I see there's some pigeons up there giving me a round of applause or something, flapping their wings, but a little bit distracting, but still no less. If you don't laugh, you cry in this world. Aww. Cutting taxes on clean production will bring jobs and production home and bring global emissions down. We will do this to restore our industrial base and take back control of our economy from the Americans. It'll be part of my Bring It Home tax cut on work, investment, energy, and home building. This plan will lower income tax, investment tax. We will axe the sales tax on new homes to save you up to $50,000 on the purchase of a new house. We'll lower taxes to unleash massive booms in our different sectors. to bring home paychecks and productions. Our mines, factories, mills will be buzzing with work for our welders, carpenters, pipe fitters, heavy machinery operators, assembly line workers, sheet metal workers. They will be making more by making more. We will be a strong, self-reliant, and sovereign nation standing on our own feet and standing up to the Americans.
Yeah, that's a good message there. Cut all the taxes. This is exactly what we need. We need taxes cut. Pierre Poilievre is the right man for the job. Hopefully Canadians wake up and it's not orange man bad, 25% tariffs. Meanwhile, China's putting 100% tariffs on us. There's no mention of Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping bad? Chinese dictator bad? We're not hearing that in the news. And we got one more clip here where they ask him if he's got plans for emissions targets.
Are you prepared to commit Canada to any kind of emissions target if you become prime minister? And if so, what would that look like?
We have to focus on technology and not taxes. First and foremost, we have to take back control of our economy. What would my emissions target look like? I treat this as a global problem. By bringing home production from more polluting foreign jurisdictions, we reduce global emissions while growing our own paychecks. I don't think it is an achievement to shut down a Canadian steel mill and then see one open up in China that produces 10 or 20 times more emissions for each unit of steel. What we need to do is acknowledge that the best way to reduce emissions is to bring home clean production here. For example, National Bank has calculated that we could displace 2.5 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions in India if we would supply them with our clean Canadian natural gas rather than having them power their economy with coal. 2.5 billion tons is 3 times the emission by bringing jobs home through technology and not taxes. And that's what I announced today.
Pierre's been talking about this for a while, and I brought this up about a week ago. If we just increased our LNG production, we could displace more Chinese coal, as well as coal being used in India. This is the simplest way to reduce emissions
polluter right now
and make Canada prosperous. But instead, the Liberals just tax us and say it's going to fix the wildfires, meanwhile giving our money to Ukraine and not buying water bombers for our own country. You can't make up this level of stupid. They're just taking advantage of us. They don't care about us. They never have. It's unbelievable to think. I showed you that tweet from Mark Carney with net zero. How do we get to net zero? There is no net zero. Net zero is essentially having no Canadians. Is that what Mark Carney wants? All of us to not exist? There's no green utopia. Show me a place on earth that has a net zero. It doesn't exist. Mark Carney just doesn't want us to exist. He just wants to milk us dry while he flies around his gas-guzzling jet. His actions and his previous business have been anything but net zero. Mark Carney is the biggest hypocrite on planet Earth. There we have it, quite the developments here today between cutting all the carbon taxes with Pierre Poilievre, Mark Carney setting up the framework for Canada to join the EU when we're sitting quite literally right next to the most powerful nation on earth. Why would we do that? I'm sorry, but we don't need any more dangerous refugees fleeing into our country and wreaking more havoc, ending more people, causing more crime, stealing more things, more home invasions. We have had enough. All an election.
Yeah, this was so good. I want to share a couple of clips from Rumble, just short ones before I get into another Carney video. Because again, like the elections are going to come. I don't think he wants so much information coming out before he possibly gets elected. Again, he's a Bilderberg EU WEF puppet, global elitist, and with shares and stocks in and so many. Elon Musk dad scrawls swastika on New York City Cybertruck in broad daylight, leaving Jewish owners stunned. I feel myself burning inside. So, like, these protesters, you're something else. You're not even protesters. Like, get a job, get a real job. On March 13th, 2025, Michael Lewis, a Jewish man, vandalized a Cybertruck in Brooklyn by drawing a swastika in the dust. The act was witnessed by a New York Post reporter. That's interesting. Maybe staged and planned. Lewis was arrested but released without charges. This is the third incident and growing anti-Musk sentiment. Of course he got released. And there were people that weren't even at the protest on January 6th that were in jail. Yeah. Yeah, so calling Jewish people Nazis is interesting. This was a good one. Bombshell: Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, and the pedophile network that controls him exposed. This is from Press for Truth.
In fact, selected, not elect. Reporting for Press for Truth with breaking news, Mark Carney has just been sworn in as Canada's newest Prime Minister.
Oh my God.
This globalist bankster, this WEF puppet and Bilderberg insider was in fact selected, not elected, proving that the system here in Canada is not broken, my friends. The system is clearly fixed. Now, many of you are saying, Dan, aren't you aware that something like this has already happened with Kim Campbell, who became the Prime Minister in the exact same way after the resignation of Brian Mulroney? Or what about John Turner, who became Prime Minister in the exact same way following the resignation of Pierre Elliott Trudeau? Well, folks, the difference between Campbell and Turner is that they were elected and voted to become members of the legislature. They were members of parliament. They were representing the people who voted for them. Whereas Mark Carney, on the other hand, has never received a single vote from a Canadian in his life. He holds no place in public office. He's never had a seat in the legislature. He's not a member
He's been hired as a financial advisor and an advisor, and he did a terrible job. But no, not elected.
Of parliament. He has in fact been appointed and selected, and he holds zero allegiance to the Canadian people, but all of his allegiance goes to the King of England, Charles III. Listen to what the incoming Prime Minister has to pledge when becoming the Prime Minister of Canada. Listen closely.
I, Mark Carney, do solemnly and sincerely swear that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will, in all things, to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council.
You want to know why he's saying
Generally,
that?
in all
because he's slamming Pierre Poilievre for not having a security clearance. And like, who cares? I have top secret government clearance. I don't understand why it's such a big issue. Other than like, there's conversations that Pierre Poilievre would not be able to be present for because he doesn't have the clearance. But allegedly, it makes it where he he would be able to be more bipartisan, and he would be able to speak and expose people from within government that are possibly committing crimes. I don't get or understand that justification at all, because again, I have top secret government clearance, and I absolutely believe that it is my job, because it's not because of my quote unquote privileged friggin' clearance, where I got this information from at all. It's all open source. I'm calling up, like, it's my job to call people out within government that are committing crimes or lying about major events. Like, these are things that when you're serving, especially, you should be calling this stuff out and not enabling and supporting it, right? So even what's going on with Ukraine and the funding, like Pierre Poilievre should not be funding and supporting that. We should not be trying to align with the EU right now. We cannot trust them because there are a globalist elite type group that are heads of the banking systems, education systems, like the war and real estate industries like Vanguard and BlackRock and General Dynamics and Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman, etc. And Mark Carney absolutely has multiple shares in stocks, and so do his friends and family in these companies, and they are making bank. And so the fact that he's going to be able to dictate what and where do we get involved, and knowing that he's bullshitting about so many different things, it's just, yeah, these are interesting times. And if you are truly a liberal or someone that wants democracy, you should not be voting for him. No matter, even if you hate Pierre Poilievre, you should not be voting for Mark Carney, because out of the whole group, he is the most entitled, ego-driven, narcissistic child abuser, in my humble opinion, based on bringing his daughter as a child to Tavistock for gender reassignment treatments. That's not informed consent. There's so much more, but these Bilderberg elitist groups that make these decisions behind closed doors, international decisions, they should not be the ones that are running the countries, and they always end up being the ones that run the friggin' countries. So I've said this. Look at the Bilderberg lists of people that went, and then see within a few years, certain people became the leaders of countries, ladies and gentlemen.
Things I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty.
A faithful and true servant to His Majesty the King.
Yeah.
Well, folks, in case you didn't know, His Majesty the King, King Charles, can be seen here being poked in the chest by a member of the Rothschild banking dynasty. And the reason why this Rothschild is able to poke the future king in the chest like this is because of the great deal of power that they hold and control over the royal banking family, because of a network of a pedophile blackmailing ring that they are in control of. They used Jimmy Savile to compromise the future king. In case you didn't know, after his death, there were hundreds of allegations of sexual abuse made against this man, and he was investigated. His whole legacy was tarnished, and the police concluded he was a predatory sex offender and possibly one of Britain's most prolific sex offenders. And these guys were the closest of friends. There are countless photos of these two hanging out together time and time again. Again, this is Britain's most prolific pedophile, guys. Jimmy Savile, completely tied and connected to the royal family. Now, here's where things get very interesting. What you're looking at here is a picture of the future king with Robert Maxwell. This is the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, who can be seen here meeting the Queen with her father. Of course, Ghislaine Maxwell is the girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein, the perhaps the most prolific pedophile and sex offender and operator of this pedophile blackmailing ring, Jeffrey Epstein. She worked in hand with him. She is now currently serving time for doing so. And look how they managed to infiltrate their way into the Queen's very own private cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, so the royal family has been heavily compromised, this king that Carney pledges allegiance to. If you saw my video, King Charles III, What You Need to Know, you would know all of this, because I exposed the Rothschild family's connections to the British royal family and how they used a network of pedophiles to exert a great deal of control over the British royals still to this day. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, here you are looking at a picture of the same Ghislaine Maxwell with Mark Carney. This is from 2013, 1 year after he became the governor of the Bank of England, and 5 years after Jeffrey Epstein was convicted as being a sex offender. So Mark Carney is absolutely being compromised by Ghislaine Maxwell and the Rothschild banking dynasty. I mean, in case you didn't know, the Vatican launched this Council for Inclusive Capitalism back in 2020, and look who's pictured here with the Pope. None other than Mark Carney and Lynn Rothschild. Yes, from the very same banking dynasty who is, running this thing and controlling these puppet politicians. It's the same with Macron and his pedophile wife, Bridget, who I exposed in this video. In France, pedophiles are pushing for mandatory vaccines, where I said the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, fell victim to an elite banking pedophile ring when he was just 15 years old. His current wife, Bridget Macron, seduced the would-be leader when he was 15, and she was his 40-year-old teacher, who was married with 3 kids at the time. As their relationship developed, Emmanuel soon found himself working as an investment banker in a highly paid position at the Rothschild Bank. So that's what they do, guys. They use these pedophiles to gain a great deal of control over these would-be leaders. And Mark Carney was absolutely just selected, not elected. Again, he's never been voted for into this position that he's just received. And some of the things that he's pushing for are going to be very scary. I mean, the man claims to be a Catholic, But so did Justin Trudeau, I'll remind you. And what did we see under the Catholic Christian Justin Trudeau? We saw abortions being completely promoted. We saw assisted suicide being pushed through things like MAID. We saw churches being burned to the ground because of this fake residential school hoax. Guys, if you thought that was bad, just wait until you're going to see what's going to come from this man, Mark Carney, who I will warn you also is one of the biggest advocates for a digital global currency. Beyond politics, Carney wants to reshape the world's financial system. In 2019, he proposed a synthetic hegemonic currency, or an SHC, a global digital currency that would replace the US dollar as a world reserve currency. I don't think Donald Trump's going to like the sound of that very much. Do you? And how would it work? Through a network of central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. Carney has been one of the strongest advocates for CBDCs, which, if implemented, would give governments the power to track, limit, and even freeze your transactions. This isn't some conspiracy theory. It's what globalist banking elites have openly discussed. And guess who's leading the charge in Canada, folks? Mark Carney. So if you didn't catch my video from a few days ago, guys, wake up, Canada. The selection of Mark Carney proves that democracy is an illusion. I would advise you to check that one out. And just remember, this man was not given a seat in the member of parliament as any kind of a minister leading up to this. He has been selected and appointed by his WEF and Bilderberg overlords, and he is being compromised and is being controlled by the likes of the Rothschild banking dynasty and the Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein pedophile blackmailing operation. So that's your new Prime Minister of Canada, folks. Just wanted to bring that one to your attention, guys. If you do appreciate my efforts to do so, I'd ask that you please check me out here at Subscribestar.
This was good too. I'm going to show Maxime Bernier on Redacted. I think he's been on his show a few times, and with Tucker Carlson. But this is who I voted for in 2021 because he was the only one that made sense to me at the time. And so I did watch a video yesterday where it was on Redacted, but it was the one where he actually got arrested during COVID when he was in the leadership race and during election period, and he was having a rally the following day where he was going to be speaking. And he got arrested and he was in jail. He was jailed, and so he missed it. And again, this was political warfare.
And 20. All right, let's talk about Canada now, shall we? Justin Trudeau seems hell-bent on destroying Canada. It's his favorite pastime, forcing Canadians to fund a pointless war in Ukraine. He confirms that Canada has sent $20 billion to Ukraine already and is ready to send more. Watch.
We've also invested close to $20 billion in supports for Ukraine, military, economic, and other. And we're going to continue to be there to support Ukraine.
Yeah, he will be. What about troops on the ground? Should Canada start sending young men there to die more than have already? I mean, there's been plenty of Canadian mercenaries we know probably already killed, American mercenaries, French mercenaries, Polish mercenaries. But will he send Canadian men there to die, young men? Watch.
Prime Minister Starmer said specifically it will mean UK boots on the ground and planes in the air. From your answer, I am taking that will not mean Canadian boots on the ground. Is that, just to finish, is that the case, or are you considering Canadian boots on the ground in the form of peacekeepers down the road?
Every step of the way, Canada has looked at the ways it can best help. And as I've said a few days ago, everything's on the table. We know that the Canadian military has ways that it can contribute. We're not going to get ahead of the discussions on how to keep a peace that isn't yet in place. But Canada will be there and is open to doing what is necessary, but those will be decisions taken in the coming years.
Yeah, so more money and more weapons heading there. Natalie had to step out, But I'm going to interview now. Maxime Bernier is a leader of the People's Party of Canada and joins us now to comment about this. So, Maxime, great to see you. Welcome back to the show. So, not ruling out boots on the ground, more money to Ukraine. This sounds exactly like what the Canadian people want, right?
Yes, and it said also we will decide for the boots on the ground in coming years. So for him, this war must go on, must go on. Like you said, we spend, not invest, but spend $20 billion, money that we don't have. We have a deficit of 62 billion dollars. So he does not understand the reality. The reality is, the only adult in the room is President Trump. We must have a peace over there, and the conditions are out there. Ukraine must be neutral, no troops, European or Canadian troops in Ukraine. And the Russia will keep Crimea and Donbass, and that's it. The deal is on the table, and the history of our country is to promote peace and peacekeeping. So he must be with Trump on that, and that will be great for Europe. That would be great for our country. We don't have to spend more money over there. Now, what I'm understanding is when Trudeau is saying we are with Ukraine, is saying we are with the destruction of Ukraine.
Right. Yes, that's absolutely the case. I mean, so he's been aligning himself with these European leaders. He was in Kiev, I think, a week or so ago. He showed up there on the train. He's glad-handing with Zelensky and all of those guys, giving a big hug to Zelensky. Then he's hanging out with the European leaders, aligning himself with Europe. This seems to be the pattern of the Liberal Party. But Pierre Poilievre also standing with Ukraine. There doesn't seem to be much daylight at all between Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau on the question of Ukraine. Am I wrong about that?
You're absolutely right. And it is why Pierre Poilievre is losing a lot of support in the polls in Canada right now, because he is like Trudeau, and people will prefer to vote for the real liberals instead of the fake one with Pierre Poilievre. So on Ukraine is go and is out there speaking about, us being more involved in that war. And he's fighting Trump on that like Trudeau. So on a lot of issues, Poilievre, the Conservatives, are like the Liberals, and that's why I said long time ago that they are conservative in name only in Canada. We don't have this Conservative Party is morally and intellectually corrupt, and that's why we, the People's Party, at the next election, I can tell you, we are in it to win it, and we'll see what will happen.
Well, right now there seems to be a trade war. Prime Minister Trudeau was sort of given an ultimatum by President Trump. Hey, stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States, or we're going to put these 25% tariffs on your country. You export quite a bit to the United States, and we don't need you to be doing that. Canada has massive tariffs, like we talked about, dairy and other things, cheeses, 300% tariffs on United States agriculture and cheeses and dairy coming into Canada. So huge prices on that. This trade war seems to be happening. Trudeau had an opportunity to stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States. Did he even do anything at all to try to stop the flow of fentanyl into the U.S.?
He started a little bit a couple of weeks ago, but it's not enough. He must be more serious about that and reinvest in our own national defense. He did say that he will invest more than $2 billion to protect our borders, but we need to see that as soon as possible. So my understanding with President Trump, he wants to reopen the free trade agreement right now, not waiting until 2026, but now. So let's tell him, President Trump, you don't like the deal that we have with you. Let's reopen that deal and put everything on the table. Yes, the dairy cartel and also the automobile sector, put everything on the table and have real negotiation. Now, Poilievre and Trudeau, again, they are on the same on that. They want to be sure that Canadians will pay more taxes, because today Trudeau did impose 25% tariffs on a lot of goods that are coming from the US, that is a tax on Canadians. And I'm the only politician who's saying enough is enough. We are paying a lot of taxes. But no, they want to impose more taxes on us. The reality is we must not do that. Just take our time, go in Washington, have that discussion with Trump, reopen the free trade agreement, and, not imposing more tariffs on us. What they're doing, they are, our economy will be in a recession because of that. And more people don't understand that we don't have a leader that will fight for our country. And the way to fight for our country is not to do retaliation measures like they're doing right now.
Exactly.
I speak to quite a few Canadians who tell me the same thing. They cannot believe what they've seen, the destruction of their country under Justin Trudeau in just the past couple of years. What they have done, what this man has done is unbelievable. And just when I think he can't do any more damage, the guy resigns a few weeks ago, says he's going to resign. He managed to do even more damage a few weeks after that. Unbelievable. Maxime Bernier, thank you for joining us from Montreal, Canada. We're watching this very, very...
Montreal. Yeah, so Maxime Bernier, he, this is not the video I wanted to share, but it's just to show you that he was so demonized in like political groups, but also in mainstream media. That this guy was talked about, he was labeled as being like a white supremacist, right-wing extremist, all of this stuff, and not about that at all. And so I really hope that people don't vote for Mark Carney in this election. Oh my God. And even with Pierre Poilievre, there are concerns again about the funding to Ukraine and other proxy wars like I've talked about before, and still not getting it. And there's people talking about a possible draft to be tabled in Canada. Ridiculous. And there's going to be warmongers and people that are involved in the companies that work with the military industrial complex that are going to absolutely want and love this. And these people are psyoped and captured, unfortunately. And I repeatedly reach out to people online, connections that I've had from the past, people that I've worked with that are working at high-level intelligence organizations, and just say, like, could we have a meeting and just discuss what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, I would love to discuss what's so many different things, right? Because this is what we need in Canada right now, people to peacefully and respectfully have these conversations behind closed doors with people, where they can leverage contacts. And so if you're watching this and you're working in government, I have said this before, and you can reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want to. I've given my email address, don189@protonmail.com. I am open to having conversations, meeting. I live in the outskirts of Ottawa right now still, because it's important to me to be in this area, because this is Canada's swamp right now, unfortunately. And a lot of people here, again, are captured, unfortunately, in positions that really matter. And I would just love to have the opportunity to sit down and have discussions, conversations with them, and share a lot of data, a lot of evidence that they are not getting, right? And I would do that for free, obviously. We'd go to a pub, I don't know. Anyway, on that note, I will leave it at that, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.